guys. Thank you for your patience. Had a little bit of technical difficulties, but we are back live. All right, so we are going to get started. Well, first of all, I'm just gonna do a quick voice check. Can you guys still hear me without the mic?
Yeah.
Perfect, then we will not use it. All right, so welcome to the web scraping workshop. My name is Seok.
I'm Kevin.
And we are both in the VandyHacks content committee here to present to you what web scraping is and how you guys might be able to use it for your own projects for VandyHacks 8.
And here to help us is also Keshvi, who will be helping you guys if you have any questions.
For sure, guys. If you guys have any questions, feel free to just raise your hand, Keshvi, or we will answer your questions, or Keshvi will come by and hopefully be able to help you guys. All right, so let's talk about our agenda. All right, so we're first going to talk about what is web scraping. We'll do a really quick recap on web development languages, and we'll go on to how to web scrape, and we'll also introduce this really cool tool called Selenium, which will basically help you automate these processes that we'll teach you guys right now. So let's dive into the basics of web scraping. So web scraping is also known as web harvesting or web data extraction. So it's this basic idea of extracting data from websites. So imagine out on the internet, there's really a lot of unstructured data out there. And thank you. A lot of unstructured data out there. And say we want to find a particular type of data. Well, we can use this really cool tool called web scraping to be able to organize a lot of these data for us and basically output a lot of structured data in which we can use for whatever data analysis that we might want to do. So to go over a couple of examples.
Yeah, so just to go over a couple of examples real quick. So one example is if you want to look at real estate data, you're looking to buy a house. You can scrape certain websites like Zillow for real estate listings. You can check when things are sold. You can check for price drops. Another example is shopping sites. If you were looking for, AirPods or something off Amazon, and you want to wait for a price drop or something, that's what Honey kind of does. It waits for price drops and scrapes that website, and it'll let you know. Online job application links. If you're applying for internships, you're applying to jobs, this is actually what we'll be doing in the last 20 minutes. We'll actually be scraping a real job application site so we can get links to apply to. Check price changes, I kind of mentioned that before, and then gather data from competitors. If you work for a company, a lot of companies, they like to go to, they would like to inventory other companies' data. This is actually the work that I did over the summer. So yeah, very, very useful for companies, saves a lot of time, saves a lot of money for them.
So yeah, these are just a couple of ideas that implements web scraping. So if this is interesting to you, then you're in the right place. So now the question is, well, how do we implement web scraping? Well, for this, like I said before, we're going to do a really basic recap on web development. Now, if you've been in the web dev workshop right beforehand, you will be able to answer this question really, really easily. But can anybody remind me of the 3 main web development languages? Yes, sir. And one more? JavaScript. There you go. All right, King. So, like you said, there's HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Really quick recap. So HTML is basically your building blocks of your website. This holds all of your web content. CSS is your style guide. So anything you want to do in terms of styling your website, that's where CSS goes into. And JavaScript enhances your interactivity with your website. So anything fancy you want to do, well, JavaScript is your do. All right, so really quick question. So if we're doing web scraping, and web scraping is basically the harvesting of data, which one of these 3 languages do you think we will be working with the most? HTML. There you go. Absolutely. So we will be solely working on HTML. We will not be looking at CSS and JavaScript at all today. So hopefully you guys have a really good idea of what HTML is. If not, don't worry. We will kind of walk you through it. But that is our basic recap of web development languages. So let's go back to how to web scrape. And we'll also include a small demo on Google Colab that you guys can follow through with us. But let's go ahead and run through the basics really quick. So web scraping, well, it works on many different languages. There's Python, which uses the library called Beautiful Soup. This is actually the one that we'll be using today. There's also Node.js that uses Cheerio, or Ruby that uses this library called Nokogiri. But today we will get Beautiful Soup because it's beautiful and it's soup. All right, so let's do a recap on what we'll do today. So This is kind of like a really good diagram of what the web scraping process is, and hopefully this gives you a better idea of what we'll be doing today. So first of all, we're going to target a website that we want to collect some data on, and we're going to extract and analyze the source code of that data, build a scraper in Python, and basically we will hopefully extract some structured data or some particular data that we want to export. Any questions so far? We're kind of running through this really, really quickly. Hopefully it's still making sense. Any questions so far on what web scraping is, what we're going to do today?
Anyone went to the beginning workshop?
Any Vandy students from the
we got
beginning workshop?
one.
Oh,
There we go.
shoot.
Two,
All right.
three. So we'll be running over some of the stuff just to get everyone on track, but it'll be a lot quicker, and then we'll get into some new stuff.
All right, so if you guys can go to this GitHub link really quick, it'll be github.com/bandyhacks VH8-web-scraping-workshop.
You can also just go to github.com/bandyhacks and just scroll down and find the actual repository with the workshop in it.
All right, so
VH8 web scraping. There's one on GraphQL, one on deep learning. We're going to go to web scraping.
okay, so there's two links down here that we're going to ask you to click on and follow through. If you want to follow us along and code along with us, click on this first link that says want some hands-on practice. If not, if you just want to read through the code with us, you can go to the second link, which basically has the code that we will explain along. So in our case, we will do the first one. Right, so guys, you can't directly edit these like Google Colab. So what you guys will do is go to File and save a copy in your drive. Make sure you do that. Give you guys a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. So on top right here, there's like a file button. If you go to File and Save as Copy in your drive, it'll save a copy into your Google Drive account.
That you can edit.
Yeah, that you can edit. All right, is everybody good? Perfect. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and.
All right, so right off the bat, I provided a little bit of base code here, but there are a couple of things that you can see. The first thing that we're doing is we're importing a couple of things. We're going to import this thing called request, which is basically how we're actually going to make requests and actually get the files. Then we're importing something called Beautiful Soup, which will actually help us parse through that data. So if you actually go to a website, so I'm actually going to go back to the GitHub real quick. Yeah, so real quick thing to mention is that the website that will actually be scraping is vhworkshops.github.io, which will this is a cute little website that we have here. And basically what happens whenever you make a request and whenever you want to load a website is that you are getting a bunch of files, which is the reason why, you know, if your internet goes down, you still have access to this page. So if I actually wanted to inspect this, you'll see over here, how do I move this? Oh, I can move this, okay. So you can see here that we have this thing called sources, and these sources are all the files that you get whenever you make a request to a website. So when I say I want to get a request from a website, what I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, I want to get all these files. And then the server will send the files, and then what I'm doing is I'm using Beautiful Soup, which we imported earlier, and I'm saying, hey, Beautiful Soup, move through all these, move through the content of these pages and get me all the HTML that I want. So if I were to actually run this code real quick, which you can do right here. I gotta import stuff first. That's a good idea. So learning lesson, things go in order. So we want to import what we actually want first, and then we're going to actually make a request. And you're going to see we have all the HTML. All the HTML of the code that we have mentioned over here matches up. It's all the same stuff. And then what we're going to do eventually is we're actually going to scrape through all this data. We're going to get the parts that we actually want from it.
All right, so let's start by trying to grab a tag. First of all, did everybody follow through? Just to be clear, if you guys want to run a cell, make sure to just click on these right here, or if you're on a Mac, you can do Command Return. I believe on Windows it's Control Return. You might need to work on if that's right. But okay, let's start with grabbing a tag. So let's, for example, let's go to our website and see that we want to grab our first line that says, "Hi, I'm Sammy, the Space Explorer." Well, it's being surrounded by the H1 tag. Can you guys see that? Is that visible?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So you guys can see that it's the H1 tag, so we will remember that. So what we're gonna do is we are going to say soup.find. So remember, soup is what has all of our HTML content. We're going to find, and inside our parameters, we will say H1. Okay, well, we can't just run this method because it won't really return anything for us. So we're going to assign it to a variable. Well, let's just call it X. And let's print the variable to see if we got the right element.
And find will find the first element that exists. We'll go over something called find all later that will actually help you find all of them.
So as you guys can see, hopefully you guys made it to here where we have like the H1 tags and it says the line that we were trying to find, which is really good. So let's say that we want to also find all of the H1 elements of the entire website, sorry. In that case, we wouldn't use find, we would use a different, let me add another code block really quick. So let's just have another variable. We'll do soup.find underscore all, but we'll use the same parameter of H1. And let's go ahead and print Y and see if that gives us what we want. So actually, I believe there's only one H1 tag. So actually, let's see what we can find is multiple. There's multiple. So let's try to grab all the H2 tags instead and see if it gives us an array of everything that we need. All right, so here's an array that has all of our H2 tags. And now you can now you guys can see like the difference between the find and the find all. So again, find gives you the first element that they find. Find all gives you all of the elements that they find. Everybody following so far? We're good? Yes, question.
So you have the first one where you grab the tags, but how do you get the Y variable? Because separate from
How to make the new code block?
yeah.
So you see the plus code in the top left?
Yes.
You just click that and you get a new code block right below.
All right.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions? All right. Well, with that in mind, here's a really quick challenge for you guys. So let's take a couple of minutes to see if you guys can get the phrase "squirrels were the first to land on the moon." So as a little hint, go to the website, look for this statement, find the tag, and see if you can return it.
And by the way, just as a quick hint, for those of you that are unfamiliar with Python, so right now you see that we have all these H2 elements. So what we can actually do is we have to make a for loop to access each of these individual elements. So you can say for Y item in Y, and then Y item will be each of those individual elements. So what I want to do is I want to get Y item dot text if I want to remove those ugly H2s around it. And what this will do is it'll just give us that. And if you'll also recall from arrays, one thing that you can do is you can just get that, you can get a certain element. So if I were to say like Y2, then you see that we can only print Y2 and this for loop ran again, which, you know, happens when you run a line of code. But that's how you access a specific element. So our challenge here is we just want you guys to get that element. Squirrels were the first to land on the moon. And just remember that we have the website, which is vhworkshops.github.io, and it's also on the Git repo. So we'll give you guys 2 minutes to try to print that. Yeah. All the completed code is also on GitHub in case you ever fall behind.
There you go.
Anyone got it so far? Nice.
All right, so if you guys found the phrase, go ahead and give me a show of hands. Does everybody be able to? Okay, we're getting there. So we're gonna go ahead and show you guys how to do this. So the first thing, did somebody get it as, yeah, all right, dude, yes, you go king. Yes, indeed. All right, guys. So let's go over the solutions really quick. So the first thing that we want to do, well, let's go ahead and find this phrase like squirrels was, what was it again? We're the first to land on the moon. All right, so we found it down under fun facts. So let's go ahead and find that in our elements really quick. All right, so we see that we have fun facts right here. I'm assuming it's gonna be right here. Okay, so we see that squirrels were the first to land on the moon is an li element. So that's our little hint for us to do a soup dot find all and li. Let's go ahead and put that in a list called, let's just name it Z, and see if that gives us what we need. All right, so if you guys remember, find all actually just gives you everything that has the elements of li. So if we can quickly count, we'll just say, okay, we'll do, and remember Python does 0 indexing. We'll see that 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we see that the sentence that we want is the third element, which would be the index of 2. There we go. Okay, so what we would want to do is we would print Z of 2. All right, and if we want to get rid of the little tags, we gave a little bit of a hint from before, but what we can do is just put a dot text. And if we do that, that'll get rid of the start tags and the end tags, and it'll just give you the content in between. So that's how you do it. Any questions? Everybody following so far? Great. All right. So now we're going to go into some nested elements.
Sure. So, cool thing about HTML is that you have an open tag and end tag, like we mentioned in web development. So, an open tag, as you remember, is going to be, I'm on the wrong computer. So open tag is going to be like this, and end tag is going to be something like this with a little bit backslash. So what we have here is we have this big soup of HTML, but actually what we can do is we can create little soups. So you'll see over here that we have an unordered list with a start tag and an end tag. So what we can do is that we can actually create a new miniature soup out of this. So this is really useful if you want to scrape something like a menu for links. What you'll want to do is you'll actually want to isolate the link itself, the menu itself, and you'll actually want to iterate through it and get links from that individual menu without getting any other links that you don't want on the rest of the page. So in order to do that, what we have to do is if we go down to our little nested part. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to try to get make a mini soup out of something. So let's say that I want to make a mini soup out of the social media area. So what we're going to do is we're going to say soup dot find ul, and this is not only going to print the ul, it's going to print everything that's within the ul. So if I'm going to print this, which I need to store in a variable just so I remember it, my computer remembers it. If I print that ul, we get a mini soup. So this is our little mini soup. In fact, I'll just call it mini soup. Cool. So now we have what we call a nested soup. So this soup is within our big soup. And now, if I want to grab all the list items, then I can say mini soup or I'll have to say this, so li equals mini soup dot find all list attributes, list items. So what you'll see here is we have a lot more list items, but if we only want the stuff from our social, so let's print it. Then you'll see that our list now only contains whatever we have within our mini soup. So this is very, very helpful if you want to isolate an individual part of our big soup. Are we good so far?
All right, we good? All right, we're going to move on to attributes. So attributes is really, really useful. Let me go ahead and move up really quick. Are you guys done with this? Okay. So attributes is really useful if you're trying to find a really particular element that has a specific, like say class, for example. And for example, down in social media, we have like a list of elements down here that says like Instagram and YouTube and Twitter. And let me pull it up.
Yeah, so our problem here is we have two lists, right? But what if I want to get the second one? There's actually an easier way. And what you'll see here is that the class is social. So what if I want something, the class is social? We also, in the previous workshop in web development, if you went there, we have a couple other attributes. You can set the length and width of an image. So what if we want to find certain elements with the attribute of like a length or a width?
All right, so like Kevin said, we're going to try and find the social media links, but without going through all the tedious processes. So what we'll do is another soup.find, and we're going to go ahead and grab the UL elements first. Then we're going to say that the attributes that we're looking for is of class socials. And we're going to go ahead and put that in a variable. And let's go ahead and put that in a print statement to see what it gives us. And there you go. So it's giving us the UL element that has the class attribute of socials. And there you can find the links that we were looking for. Do we isolate those?
Yeah.
So say we want to isolate these links, because right now we have like all these tags that are kind of distracting. So one of the things that we might want to do is, are we doing that? Sorry about that. Okay, so one of the things that we're going to do down here is we're going to again go back to our soup, and let's go ahead and select our particular elements. So what we're doing here is that we're going to our UI class of socials, and we're seeing that our links are being hidden beneath the A tag right here, which is where the links are.
You'll also remember that when we have a UL, so whenever we say select something, we have to say things like UL and A, which are the tags that we want to access. And we also have to write it in order. So we're getting all ULs, and within the ULs, we're getting anything, or we're getting the UL that's socials. So that's going to be our UL on our list right there. And remember that the dot in CSS is basically just saying, and in HTML and everything in general, a dot denotes the class. So we're saying we're getting the class that's UL socials, and we're getting all the A elements from it. And that's what select does. It helps you get a little more freedom in the kind of things that you want to look for.
Right. So let's put everything that we found in a really quick variable. Let's just call it S. And what we can do is do a really quick for loop so that we can print, so that we can print the, sorry about that. Okay, so I'll print it first. So if we print each element, okay, so we're seeing that it's grabbing the links, but it's grabbing like everything, including like the tags. So what we're seeing here is that we want to print the specific attribute called href. So in order to do that, we would just say href
And make sure it's in a string because otherwise it'll think it's a variable.
And let's see what that would do. And that's how you basically extract all the links. Alrighty, is everybody following? Yes. So actually, it's a good question.
Oh, so I kind of made a mistake. So when I made the website, so you know how sometimes you have things that say like click here. So here will be the text and href will be the actual link it goes to. So I made it a little confusing, that's my bad, but essentially that's the difference between the two. It would, but that was my mistake when I made the website. Basically, if you have something that says like click the link here, right? If I wanted to get the text there, it would just say here. Whereas if I were to get the href of that, then it would just be the actual href. And we'll actually get to, we'll scrape Wikipedia real quick, and that in that case it'll actually be a little different.
Yes.
Why it's not printing anything out?
Joshua, do you mind helping me really quick? Yes.
Scroll through the attributes part, it says language, because it's
So make sure it's always enclosed in strings, and then the brackets there is called an object. And you can look for multiple attributes by putting a comma between, like you can say class colon socials comma, and then you can say like href colon this link, and it'll get you like that's not going to work there, but you
Yeah.
know
Something like
that's
that.
if you want to look at multiple attributes, which I unfortunately only have one.
Are those curly brackets around the class?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Oh, that's too big. Does everybody get? Yes.
It's like the dot select function.
Can you say that one more time?
The dot select function.
Yeah. So dot select helps you make a little fancier. It's basically a more difficult in terms of actual query, but a lot easier than that. So what the dot select does is I'm finding all unordered lists with the class name of social, and that's what that dot is. So here we have our unordered list of class socials, and then I'm getting all the A's from it.
All right. So
Should we skip the
I
chat?
think we should skip the challenge.
So we're a little short on time because we've had some technical issues. So we're going to skip this challenge real quick, and we're actually going to do a little more interactive version of the next thing that we're going to do here. So now I'm going to actually use this new thing called Selenium. So let's talk about real world websites. Let's say I want to go to wikipedia.com.org. So if I were to actually look at the HTML of this, oh gosh. All right, you know what? We'll look at the German. You'll see that it's a lot more complicated, but essentially what you do with web scraping, you start small, you build up. So you are perfectly capable of scraping this website just as we did with the last one. It's just a lot more complicated and it takes a lot of time. So let's talk about Wikipedia, for example. Real websites around will always have something called a robots.txt or real serious websites. So what this does is it basically tells bots so we're kind of going into this world of bots, which has a lot of issues that you have to concern in terms of ethics. So if we look at this robots.txt, you'll see that Wikipedia itself has a lot of things that it doesn't like on its website. So you'll see it actually disallows all these bots. But also on top of the robots.txt, you see that they usually give you information if you want to scrape their website, what you're allowed to scrape and what you are not allowed to scrape. So you'll see here, like, there are a lot of pages on the site. They're very friendly about scraping, but they also want to make sure you don't make requests really fast. So if you recall from the beginning, we use this thing called request. If you put that thing in the for loop and you run it like 100 times, maybe even 50 times, the website will actually ban your IP address because they think it's malicious. Which I mean, I guess it wasn't your intention, but you're overloading the website. So always be careful of that whenever you web scrape. So this is the robots.txt of Wikipedia, and it's saying like, hey, Don't move through this website way too fast, otherwise we're gonna block your IP address. So always keep that in mind. Do you have VS Code?
Yes.
Okay, good. So do people have local IDs that support Python? Okay. So what we're gonna do is we are going to open up whatever friendly ID that we have, and we're gonna create a new project in it. If you have PyCharm, something else that works too, but let's say, you know what? Let's make this big. And let's create a new file, and we'll call it like main.py or something. So this will be our new Python file. Let's install some of these Python things. So there are a couple of things that we have to do before. This also might not work on your personal computer, but I'm 99% sure that it will. Python, anything when it comes to downloading can sometimes be really finicky, as we learned from the next workshop earlier. So let's go with our Python. And what we're gonna do is we actually need to install a couple of things. How do I open the console on this?
Oh.
Yeah. All right. Oh yeah,
Also,
cool.
do you want to zoom?
Yeah. So there are a couple of things I need to install with my Python package manager. Usually these things come with your computer, but does everyone have their terminal open? All right. So there's a couple things we need to install. We need to install beautiful soup. So we're going to say pip install beautiful soup, just like we did before. Google's cool because they will support this. However, they don't have the support for Selenium. Command error occurred. Why? Oh, my bad. Sorry. Pip install beautiful soup 4. We have to install beautiful soup 4, which is the most recent edition, and make sure that's all lowercase and it'll work out. We also need to install something called WebDriver_manager. So this will help us actually create a mock Chrome window. So okay. Oh, sorry, pip install. So we're going to install that. And finally, we're going to install this thing called Selenium. Quick thing about Selenium, it's really, really cool. It's really, really useful, and there are entire jobs about Selenium. So we'll probably definitely run a workshop on Selenium in the spring. But basically what Selenium does is it helps you test your application, it helps you make requests to websites, and it helps you actually open them, and you can click through buttons. So let's say I want to scrape a website, and it has a load more page, or a load more button, and I want all the data. The problem with just doing beautiful soup is that you're literally accessing the data the moment that the link is requested. So you usually won't be able to actually get data. So let's say the website that we're going to be scraping is levels.fyi, if you're not familiar with it. So let's say I were to actually request this up here. So I'm just gonna, you don't need to copy what I'm doing here, but let's just say that I want to scrape levels.fyi. It should print the code out, or it should print the HTML, right? Which it does. The problem is that it's not printing out all of the code. So if I actually went to here, you'll see like, oh, like surely Jane Street should be somewhere on this in this HTML, which unfortunately it's not. So why is that? So when I run this thing, you'll see real quick that there's this like little loading thing. So this is asynchronous because there's a ton of data that needs to load. And the problem with data is that it takes a lot of time. So that's why a lot of websites are impossible to scrape with just beautiful soup. So now we're actually going to use Selenium. So now that we have Selenium installed, we got to run through all the basic things. So we got to import. We got to do our imports first. So what we're going to say is from BS4, import beautiful soup. If I'm moving too fast, you can just follow along as BS, because we're all going to be doing this together. So now I'm going to import requests, which we had to do earlier to make requests. And then I'm going to say from WebDriver manager _ manager dot Chrome, because we're going to actually use Chrome this time. We're going to import Chrome driver manager. All right. And then we're going to import Selenium as we did before. And that's all we need for now. So the first thing we need to do with, when it comes to Selenium is we actually need to install our WebDriver. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to create a driver. I'm going to say driver equals WebDriver.Chrome, because we're making a Chrome one. And then we can say like Chrome driver manager, open braces or open parentheses, close paren, dot install. So we're installing this Chrome driver manager that we imported from our WebDriver manager. This isn't the ideal way to do it, but it's the quickest way to do it because otherwise it takes a while. So we're going to first install it. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to scrape our levels website. So let's go over here and actually look at levels. So you'll see levels, they have this thing, they have the supply link over here. And this supply link, if you click on it, will take you directly to the internship application. So what if I want all the apply links from here? Well, let's take a quick look at levels.fyi/robots.txt just to see if we're actually allowed to do it real quick. And actually, if you go to that website, they're like, hey, we're looking for interested engineers like yourself, come apply to this individual email. So, web scraping is a really cool, really niche thing that you can talk about in interviews if you've actually had practice in it. And a lot of companies actually love people that can do this kind of thing because you really, really begin to understand HTML and the fundamentals of web scraping or of web development that are really, really important. So you can see here, they're cool with us scraping it, which is cool. So let's go over here. So we're going to install our WebDrive manager, and then we actually need to get with our driver our levels.fyi. So we're going to say levels.fyi/internships. Are we good? So now we're using the driver and we're actually getting it. All right. So let's run this and see what happens. So if I run it, it's taking a while just to install the WebDriver manager for the first time, unless I did something wrong, which I hope I did not. Why is this taking so long? Okay, cool. It was trying to download it. So now what it's actually doing is it's creating an automated, you'll see Chrome is being controlled by automated test software. So this is kind of how bots are made in a way. And what you can do in this with Selenium is you can literally click through these things. You can click through multiple links. You can load more. You can do all these really cool things with it. But what we're going to do is we're just going to use it for now just to fetch data. As I mentioned before, it takes a while to load data, right? So what I actually want to do is I want to import something called sleep, which will actually help me make sure that I wait before I actually take the soup. So let's say it's from time, I'm going to import sleep. All right, so I imported sleep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell my Python script to sleep for 3 seconds. So this will hopefully be enough time for our data to actually load. And also, if you want to scrape websites and make a lot of web requests, you're going to use sleep a lot, and you want to set a random time to it so that you make sure that you're not overloading the server and the server doesn't think you're doing anything bad. All right, so now what we're going to do, now that we have all the code that we actually, or we have all the HTML that we actually want, is we're now going to finally do the stuff that we did before. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say, soup equals beautiful soup. And then we're gonna say driver dot page source. So Selenium's a little different. They use something called page source. And we're gonna use something called HTML dot parser. So we're specifying that we want to scrape the HTML out of this, which beautiful soup does by itself, or request does by itself already, but driver does not. So we need to specify what we're doing. So we're scraping the HTML. So let's actually print the soup and see what it's like. And if everything I'm going to be that we're going to be doing, I'm going to be doing. So you don't always have to run it, just because I don't want a lot of requests to be coming out of the same place. So yeah, we've loaded. Oh, it's taking a while. So we've loaded this, and then we were waiting 3 seconds until it loads, and then we finally actually have our data at last. We have the data that we actually want. And it's very, very long. But you'll see if I actually were to search something like Jane Street now. Uh-oh, apply. Jane, it doesn't show up. Facebook. Okay, maybe I waited too little. So let's say 5 seconds. See what happens now. Yeah. Because data takes a long time. So what a lot of websites will do, instead of having you wait forever for a page to load, they'll load the page and then asynchronously or in their own time, they're going to get all this data. So that's why we actually need to wait before we can parse the HTML that we're given. Now it will work. Cool. So now we've actually loaded the data. Now we actually have A's. Now we actually have hrefs. Now we are actually good. So what if I want only the links? Let's take a look at bad habits. All right, so let's take a look. So just as we mentioned before, all these links are within this A. And we only want these links. We don't want any other links on this website. We don't want these home, apply. We don't need these expands. We don't want these add internships. We only want the apply links. So the first thing I see is that they're in these TDs. So these little table items right here. And within this table item, which I unfortunately cannot seem to be able to expand, we have within it a paragraph, and within it we have our actual link that we want to scrape. And you'll see that sure enough, it has an href. And to the person that asked the question before, the text is different here. It's going to be applied, but the href is actually going to take you to the link. So they're two different things. So we want just the link. So first, what I want to do is I just want to get so I first just want to get the pieces of table data. So has the answer. How am I going to get each of these? How am I going to get an array of these pieces of the table? How am I going to get all the TDs? Is soup.find all TDs, correct. So I'm going to say all TDs or something equals soup.find all TDs. TD. So this is going to give us all the TDs. But guess what? It gives us more than what we want, because look here, we have TDs for Hudson River Trading, which has its own links. We have TDs for this, we have TDs for this, but we just want this TD. What's special about this TD? All right, if you actually go to the website and look at it, what specific attribute here is unique? Just this TD right here. It has a certain class that's always going to be different from all the other ones. Which one is it?
apply TH.
Correct. So we want to find all the TDs that have applied TH. So I'm going to head over here and I want attributes equals class. And then the specific one, remember it's case sensitive. So it's going to be apply TH. Now we're getting all the TDs with type TH. I'm going to do a quick for loop. What the heck? All right, so now I have all these individual TD elements. All right, let's actually look at these. Let's look at this TD. That's apply. What do we want? What specific element do we want from this TD or from this table data? So if href is an attribute, what's the element that we want? A, correct. And A is always going to have a link. Almost always. So let's say that we want the A. So now we're going to say, what do we need to actually get the A? We're going to do dot find because we're only want one, and there's actually only going to be one. But the thing about find all is it's going to return an array. Even if there's one element, it's going to return an array of one because that's what it's expected to return. So let's say I want to find the first A. And then how do we find the actual attribute? How do we get the href? How do we get the href? Not make a query to find it. So remember that we actually use the brackets here and we say the href. So now we're finding the A's, and then with this result, we're printing the href of it. So this is actually a little confusing and it's my bad. This is just if you want to do a lot of shorthand and be really fancy and do like your hacker ranks and stuff. So let's say I just assign this to a variable. So like a val equals td.find a. And then I print a val and I get that href. So that was a little confusing. I should have probably put in 2 lines. So hopefully we're actually going to get each individual link. And also one last thing that I forgot to mention is that if I go down here, I got a lot of Google Chromes that are happening. So the way that I get rid of them is I do driver.quit and it quits. Simple. So now if I run this code, load, we're opening it, we're getting the levels FYI, we're waiting for this data to load. Loading, and now we have the Seok and we're actually going to scrape the apply links. So once it quits, and I go down here, you see that we have all these apply links. What can we do with these apply links? We can put them in a database, we can put them in a SQL database, we can store them somewhere, and this is how, let's say, what's an example of something that might use this data? Anyone have an example of something that might want to use data from another website? Let's say something like Google Flights. How is it going to get data from all these individual airlines? It's going to be looking for the actual pieces of data and it's going to show them for you. So that's not exactly how it works, but it's just a quick way for me to explain it. So now we have all the jobs. We can take these jobs, we can store them in an array. We have all these links. If you really want to be fancy and make a bot that you could literally just go through this and you can make requests to each of these individual links, and then you can like fill in stuff with Selenium and like apply this stuff. That's how people like apply the stuff like with bots, which I do not recommend at all. Not a good thing that you should be doing. But that's basically how these kind of things are done. So That's a quick wrap up of what we're doing with Selenium. Any questions? What is happening? Oh no, I'm getting attacked.
Hi, everyone.
Quick announcement from Austin, the astronaut. If you have yet to find a team from the initial team matching or you don't have a project idea, for the next hour, we're collecting submissions for you, and Saeed and I will be matching you guys manually. If you fill out the form at VHL or VH8/match. So if you don't have a team, fill this out.
And also for our workshop today, the link to the attendance, as always, is over there. So make sure that you fill that out. VHL.inc/scrape.
Happy hacking, guys.
Thank you. Oh, I mean, well,
I guess that's all. Sophie just kind of left on me. Any questions?